still got a couple more great readers for you tonight. Up next, I have Reyes Cardenas. Reyes Cardenas was born and raised in Seguin, Texas. His books of poetry include Survivors of the Chicano Titanic, I Was Never a Militant Chicano, and Chicano Poet Poems 1970 to 2010. Welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
A little bit about this book. There's divided into 3 sections, and the first series is about, well, I'll read you the introduction to it. It says, Andres Sobato was nicknamed El Numbnuts by the kids in his junior high school, or middle school back then, because of his numbskull behavior and all-around stupidity. And he grew up to be an adult form of himself. So this character takes up the first section of the book, and then there's another section, the second section, which is about a young boy who was born with 8 feet, and his mother, the surgeons wanted to remove the extra 8 feet, which was just around his, smaller feet, and she refused because she thought it was God's will that he was born that way. And there's another section which is more related to the 2 characters, but a little bit of a different alter ego. And I will let me try and read a couple here. So the first one, it's called Dante. No, I'm sorry, I don't want to read that one. The first one is called Gallo, which is rooster. When you hear a rooster on the west side being macho, and a punk in a bandana stands nowhere, when downtown the tower sways gently in the wind, and the river gathers its shallow depths, the cantinas open to let out the borrachos, the drunks. I scurry like an ant on a leaf, trying to get back home. The rooster flaps its wings. Amigo, we can soar, but we can't fly. They're all marked, but it's kind of hard to get through the markings. This one is called The Hounds of Heaven. The hounds of heaven turned out to be chupacabras, who sniffed me, circled me, and then disappeared into the darkness. That, in a word, is what's wrong with us Mexicans. Even the shit we make up has nothing to do with us. This one is called Desert Cowboy. My father lived in the desert, like a Mexican Gila monster. He took the sun in his mouth and spit it out with the tobacco. He irrigated the desert and its grapes of wrath. My father lost his wife and son to that unforgiving hell, but he paid it back twofold. From desert floor to mountain top, my father ruled with an iron hand, and now he's a handful of sand. My father here lived in California for a long time. He was an irrigator in the San Joaquin Valley, where they grew a lot of grapes, and that's what he did most of his life. This one is titled, You Want to Hear About Lupito. Growing up on the west side of San Antonio. Lupito got 20 years for robbing the bakery on Martin Street and for hitting the viejita, the old lady, across the face with the back of his tattooed hand. The one his Uncle Pancho held him down by when he performed those vile acts on 10-year-old Lupito. Those acts which ruled Lupito's life to this very day. Not that that's an excuse for what he did, of course. His abuela called him a sweet boy. And there you have it, Lupito's bitter life. This was called Red Wheelbarrow, which I'm pretty sure everybody's heard of. The other Red Wheelbarrow. So I stole that red wheelbarrow, glazed with rain, beside the white chickens. And I stole the chickens too. Had my abuela cook them up, sold the wheelbarrow at the pulga. Who says crime don't pay? This particular section is from the Ocho Patas section of the book where the boy was born with the 8 feet. And when he started school, I forgot to mention this, all the kids made fun of him because of his 8 feet, so they called him El Ocho Patas, or that was his nickname. And this particular thing, this particular section just sort of talks a little bit about it. In an abstract way though. El Ocho Patas was no saint you could paint. He had a moat around his throat. His angel wings were just things. His kingdom by the sea was full of heat. His queen was not clean. Still, El Ocho Patas was a savior, a godly slayer. His eyes were dark like a spark. He lived in a part of town you could drown. He flew with birds, dropped turds. He was a patron saint of ink. This poem is from the first section of Andres Solaco, and it's called The Fallacy of Daiquiris. And the poem is sort of got its inspiration from John Berryman's poem about drink daiquiris in his book. I forget the name of it now. But it's called The Fallacy of Daiquiris. Solaco's mind was clear as a bell. Well, maybe it had a crack in it, like the Liberty Bell. Maybe it had a crack in it, like the whole damn country. But from the west side, he couldn't see it. Everything seemed perfect to him. The Mexican dream had replaced the American dream. And Solaco's fat ass bounces through the barrio, convinced the west side is paradise. And only if he keeps his eyes closed long enough will one tequila tell the other the truth. This one is called, Ladies and Gentlemen, We Have a Winner. Sometimes Solaco's life is like a brand new penny. Lincoln, happy as hell to be alive. The Confederate States vanquished, Robert E. Lee lost. Sometimes Solaco's life is not worth a plug nickel. Washington's worth teeth full of termites. The British gloating over their victory. Sometimes Solaco's life is really like death warmed over, like refried beans, but not as good. This one is called Dog Day Afternoon. In a moment of weakness, Solaco had once let the widow Lomas seduce him one hot afternoon. Sorry about that one. I got the wrong one. Sorry. I want to close with this last one here. It's called What a Day for a Daydream. Solaco had no real friends, imaginary or not, made up or made down. Life has always lived sideways, sometimes in the past, sometimes in the future. Sure, Solaco daydreamed, who doesn't? Some things he daydreamed were against the law. Some things he daydreamed seemed cruel and unusual punishment. The past was sordid, and the future iffy. Solaco lay in bed like melted ice cream. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right.